Our topic for today, we're looking at Nigeria's supply chain crisis in a post-subsidy economy. Do stay with us. We'll be right back. Thank you for staying with us here on Business Daily. Welcome back to the program. Now, as I said earlier before that break, we'll be looking at some of those stories you just saw passing on the screen of your TV set. And with me in the studio to discuss this and further go into our conversation later on supply chain is Dr. Aliyu Ilias. He is an economist, development and supply chain expert. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, you know, he's one of our regulars on the program. So let's start with the highlight or major event of today, which is going to be the president signing the tax reform bills. They say that it's supposed to do some great things and help the revenue framework and help reduce, multi-taxing, multiple taxation. What's your take?
Well, I think it's a good news, quite cheering that we got to a level that Nigeria will have a debatable, issues like tax, and we now come to a conclusion. It has passed through the court of Nigerians, passed through the National Assembly. Now it's getting to have the assent.
Did it really have a lot of say in the court of Nigerians?
Right, I think yes, because there's a particular level we drag it. People say this is what we want. It was north-south issue. Some things were actually removed. And if you look at what before they actually signed it, because I tried to take a look at it, the first is just to have one-stop shop of taxation. So we will now have whereby there will not be double taxation, especially from telecos. They used to cry every time that local government will collect, state will collect, then federal will also collect. Then it will also stop us seeing those people on the road who will throw stick for you that you must actually pay them. That's a good one.
So if those guys that I see around this Chida axis now, when I walk out,
I pray it will solve that problem too, because sometimes law and implementation are two different things. Perhaps if they can actually tame it, that would be a good one for us. So one-stop shop is good. So Nigeria can also account for the tax as expected. It won't be from one point to the other. Then it also talk about NRS, Nigeria Revenue Service. We are now moving from FIRS to NRS. I think that will empower them more, and to also show project Nigeria as a country who actually which is purposeful in terms of collection of such. So then moving ahead as well, you also need to look at the joint revenue board. This will also bring them together. So I think it's a good one. We hope after the signing, we now have to look at the document itself and what.
Hopefully, when they sign, we'll come back to that and do a holistic overview.
Sure.
But you said some things about one-stop shop taxation, and I have a question. Aren't every tier of government supposed to generate revenue? Now, if this stops, how do we expect the other ones? And doesn't this in some way, impact the subnational autonomy?
Right. So it's not that the only federal government will take the revenue. Federal government will collect and return back to the subnationals, which is very cool. So it will reduce double taxation. It's possible federal government collect 100% and return 90% back. Right. But it won't be double taxation. That's what they're doing. And it's a good one, because if you have this collect, you become double. But if the federal government collects on your behalf and return, so you will also facilitate how government will collect, because the more they collect from your axis, the more you get to collect.
But when they come to sharing down at the FAC meeting. So now let's go to this meeting and coming together of NEPSA, FG, Dangote Refinery to help crash petrol prices. Do you see that really having any impact?
Right. I'm an advocate of competition anyway. When there's competition, it brings two things. It enhances quality and it brings competitive price. So if you look at these two things, it's a good one. But the question is that, what are we doing to import substitution? Right. Because before you open your wallet, before you throw it open, you have to consider your manufacturer locally. Are they be able to actually provide sufficient production for the local consumers? If yes, there wouldn't be need for allowing importation. Just the same thing for rice. If you look at rice importation properly, you discover that they have open border for rice.
Doctor, I think we've taken us to our NMDA PRA story, talking about importation to tackle substandard, but just go ahead, we'll come back to that.
So right, what I'm just trying to say is that if you give room for importation, you have to consider what you have at home first, because now we are struggling to have internal rice sufficiency. I'm bringing that example because if you have internal rice sufficiency, that simply means that you can produce that will help the local economy. But now you are opening border, so those people that have created manufacturing sector in terms of rice, paddy rice, they are down tools now, because you're now subjecting them to international competition. I'm sure Nigerian cannot compete with a country like Thailand, among other countries that have what we call economic of scale of production. So for me, if you want to actually open your border, you must also make sure that you protect your people. And that's why what we always fight for too are this African free continental trade area. Some of us say no. You don't just allow them to bring everything so that you not become a dumping ground. Tell them that textile don't bring, oil produce don't bring. You have to tell them what they can bring and what they should not bring.
Okay, but my question for this NMDPRA story, in case you're wondering what it's about, it says the NMDPRA is to begin license issuance for lubricant importation to tackle substandard products. They're saying they want to begin importation to tackle substandard products. What's to say that would actually tackle substandard products?
Well, I think it's quite even contradicting. Because who is responsible to make sure that it's quality pro? Why can you tell us where the substandard is actually coming from? That means it's not even coming from outside. It's within. And you are the one taking care of that. You should have tackled those people producing the substandard in a place of you saying that you want to open border. I think it's contradictory. They should review that decision. Okay,
all right. We'll stop with the conversation and talking about these things and all that. But in case you want to know more about them, pick up a daily newspapers and you'll have more information. And let's get to our conversation of today. Supply chain. Nigeria's supply chain crisis in a post-subsidy economy. And you see now, since the fuel subsidy has been removed, and however, how does supply chain come into place? It affects everything from food prices to business survival. Supply chain logistics is very, very important. Now, since the fuel subsidy removal in 2023, May 29, 2023, the movement of goods across Nigeria has skyrocketed. We have the diesel situation, we have the fuel situation, prices have doubled. Transporters, of course, increased their prices, and that in turn has increased the prices of goods and services now. But how do we see this now? The Nigerian supply chain has been long been held back by not just the fuel price and the petrol price and all that. No, there's called the poor road infrastructure. It's there. The insecurity is there. The port congestion is there. Of course, talking about taxes, multiple taxes and checkpoints. These things, raising transport costs. Because now you hear someone saying, I bought a bag of onions or so in Benue, and for me to transport it down, I bought it for maybe like 100,000 naira in Benue. For me to transport it down to Abuja or to the east, I'm going to have to spend roughly double the amount. That, of course, will increase the cost of onions in the markets in Abuja or down in the east. So for many businesses, especially in agriculture and retail, these challenges mean delays, losses, and rising costs that are passed on to the final consumer. I heard a story of someone. He was very interested and very excited and got into agriculture, went back home to his village in Benue. This onion story, I'm telling you literally, And then he went and bought a lot of onions and then put it in a vehicle. And by the time he came down to Lagos, he had to be selling them, I think, 50 cents on a penny or whatever it is.
Banjo. He has to sell it as banjo.
Yes, because at that point in time, it didn't make sense anymore. He had to try to recover his capital at least. Now, you're the supply chain expert. Talk to us about Nigeria's supply chain pre-subsidy and post-subsidy.
Right. So basically, let's give definition to supply chain. So what is supply chain? So supply chain simply means the activities that occur between the manufacturer, or the raw material down to the consumers. Now, in that, we call it chain. So chain has to do with what? The raw material, the distributor, the road, the taxis, the, agbero on the road, the fuel consumption and all those things. So those are the problems that we have. And go and check the better economy globally. The first thing to tackle is supply chain problem. They make it what we call ease of doing business. During Buhari actually have an office called Ease of Doing Business Office, but those ones actually do paperwork, and I want to salute them. You know, when you do paperwork, how to register a company, how to, make perfect your paper.
CAC was made very affordable.
Exactly. You know, you can also see TIN number on your CAC. You don't need to go to tax office separately.
Okay.
You know, then bureaucratic bottleneck was also cut off. That is the meaning. It simply means that all difficulties, maybe you are supposed to pass through 10 difficulties, they now reduce it to 2. You know, it makes job smoothly. So coming to Nigeria supply chain, I think a major problem of cost of goods and services, and major discouragements that we'll have in terms of businesses is supply chain problem. So let's bring it one after the other. So you said pre. Now before coming of President tinubu and before removal of first subsidy, you know, supply chain was a bit much more better. We are not tackling the issue of energy in supply chain. We are only tackling the issue of road. You know, we're tackling of the issue of taxation. But now the major one who contributes majorly is the issue of energy. So because if you have a raw material, if you even cultivate farm in Kebbi and you have onion and you have to move the onion down to Abuja, you know, the cost of the cost of farming, the cost of everything is not as expensive as the cost of transportation. So onion could be at 10 naira when you want to buy it in Kebbi. But before it gets to Abuja, it becomes 18 naira per one. What's the problem? Supply chain problem. So until we are able to identify, so what's the problem? Problem is that the movement of that item, you know, has been expensive compared to what's supposed to be. And I think that's why government said, okay, we are providing alternative. And the alternative is what? CNG. That would have come to cushion the effect, but I can tell you it has added to the problem the more, because it does not reflect, you know. And you recall, even the president said he's declaring state of emergency on food security. We are thinking that's the area is going to go. So if you look at transportation and the cost of transportation, it has caused a lot to the problem. Then beyond that also, the security agency, I traveled to Lagos and I have to coming back early this week, I have to follow by road. So I have to pass through Lagos, Ibadan, you know, Oshogbo, you know, Ondo, Ekiti, down to Kogi, and I have to follow the supply chain and the challenge most of those motorists are following on the road. And by the time I saw, you know, I'm in a commercial vehicle. So most vehicles, you know, we have J5, and those are the people that are mostly carrying the food, especially pepper, onions, down to in fact, once they see any of our security, they have package for them already. You know what I'm trying to say? If you don't have that package, they will have to delay you, and that's for security. Now let's also look at you know, the road itself. You know, we don't have road that is good at all, and it makes people to add to the money. Imagine I have to board Oshogbo to Lokoja at about 24,000 naira. You know, you look at that distance, look at the cost.
To Lokoja.
I'm telling you.
Not Lagos.
Yes, not Lagos. Oshogbo to Lokoja at 24,000. You know, so that's even for bus. If you have to take car, it's 30,000. You can see. So if you look at that, and what's the problem? It's the problem of the road. You know, road and energy cost. So let's even look at leave that. Let's go to Nigeria port and look at the problem of supply chain. Now, if you go to Nigerian port, we're supposed to have what we call one-stop shop at airport, at the seaport. From there to London, it's just 6 hours. But I can tell you, can also take the same 6 hours for you to just move from the tarmac down to the road. Now, let me now break it for you. Therein, we have what we call port health, which is where we call them environmental health officer. They will check your good. SON will check your good. NAFDAC will check your good. Custom will check your good. Look at all this bureaucratic bottleneck. It affects supply chain. Before you now clear your container, maybe 40-feet container, before you now hit the road, you know, you look at the costs of the road.
So I guess this is what they call about clearing and forwarding.
That's the job of clearing and forwarding. So before you now hit the road, when you hit the road again, remember you're going to buy petrol at is it 9.15, depends on where you are, or 1,000. You now hit the road that is poorly deficit of infrastructure. You have to head. So that amounts to why things are expensive. I watched, was it UK yesterday? Their grocery inflation is 4.7, unprecedented. You know, if you look at some country, their inflation, I mean the grocery inflation, and if you look at some country inflation, is 1%, 2% inflation. Why? Because the supply chain is made what? Easy. But Nigeria, we are, you know, it's about 24, 23% now. And what's the problem? It's just that supply chain problem. Until Nigeria is intentional to make the supply chain process easy for Nigerians, that's where we can have things at an affordable rate.
Okay, now away from food,
right?
What other sectors are affected by supply chain?
Every facet of business is affected by supply chain. Because if you look, let's even go to energy. You know, energy is a problem. Why does Dangote decide to go and buy 1,000 trailers to hit Nigerian road? Are you aware of that? Dangote just bought 1,000 trucks to be transporting petroleum products to the end users. Because it's called that there is a bureaucratic bottleneck on supply chain. I discovered that even the marketers and what have you that are taking the, you know, those trucks are also giving a lot of problems. So now let me kill this supply chain problem. Take it from my refinery and take it directly under my purview. Remember, as a supply chain person, you will create a system that will be monitoring you as you are going. They are watching you on system. There is police on the road. There is this on the road. They are monitoring it and they're calculating what is your, we call it estimated delivery time. Because by the time they calculate it and they are using CNG, it becomes much easier for a more economical firm than to expect one truck that he doesn't have control over to do. And that's for supply chain. So let's look at even food that we consume. It has a lot of effect. Let's look at even business. You know, even if you are dealing with iron, which is which cannot be rotten, right? Which we know that is not goods that will rotten. For you to deliver, you know, you have to calculate the cost of it, and the cost of it still depends on supply chain problem. So it's a whole lot, and you know, under supply chain, we have logistics, we have warehousing. You know, all this also amounts to what affects supply chain itself.
We talked about something earlier, road, but you know, I always anticipated or believed that with the rail coming on board, some of, you know, cargo should now be a real situation.
Right.
We should move there. But however, that hasn't been the case.
When I saw Dangote buying 1,000 trucks, my argument
Why did you go to the
on
rail?
TV. I said, why not multimodal? We have multimodal transportation. You can go through water. Do you know you can lay pipe even in the water?
Yeah.
Because when we say multimodal, it has to do with rail, water, even pipeline. Then, before you now talk about road.
Maybe the pipeline
So,
might not work because of, you know, people vandalism, maybe.
if pipeline is on the water,
Okay.
right, you know, Dangote refinery is on the water itself.
Okay.
So you can lay a pipe that can even get to Lokoja here. It's possible.
Okay.
In the water. Perhaps you can also use light cargo to ship your petroleum products down to places like Lokoja, even to some place like Niger State. Remember, even President Yaradua was doing dredging until we have President Jonathan that actually stopped it. By now, we would have some light, you know, cargo coming to the north. And apart from that, why do we abandon Calabar port? Why do we abandon, you know, Port Harcourt port? Why is it only Lagos? And they are saying they want to generate more revenue. Revenue is for you to expand, not for you to increase cost. Expand your, you know, activities and what have you. So these are the, so Dangote would have go through rail, because I recall that Dangote was actually interested in government rail. Government, you know, it can also, because for you to buy 1,000 trucks, do you know how much it costs? You have created business and money for another company.
There's that.
And that's why the problem. If I watch President Bola Ahmed Tinubu saying that he has just got 2,000 tractor for Nigerians, and he's showing somebody where he bought it from Belarus. I was saying this is enough for you to open up an industry in Nigeria. 2,000 to 2,000 trucks. Tell them to come and assemble it.
Yes, it should come to Nigeria and assemble
or tell,
it.
this is your responsibility. Go and get it and assemble it. You have created employment opportunity, increase our GDP. You know, a lot of business opportunities.
Generated money inside the country.
A lot. So, but I don't understand why we keep on opening such things. Go to South Africa. South Africa will tell you, I'm using only 6 brands. If you cannot assemble here, we cannot buy from you. It's a condition. Is that you produce there or you assemble here? So 1,000 truck can be assembled here. You know, I saw it the way they are bringing it from the container, finished. You know, I said, how do we now want to generate employment? Tinubu also is so proud, our president. Mr. Black is also proud that they are importing truck. And you recall, it's only federal government that is buying 2,000 truck. Niger bought 1,000, so also buy 500,
these trucks,
300.
These trucks,
you know,
these trucks are being
things.
bought is to do what exactly? Because
it's for supply chain. It's for Dangote to deliver. Why the other one for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is for farming?
I understand these things, but you know, when we look at wear and tear, because let's get to that.
Right.
The roads, first of all, are not doing so good.
That's why we are proposing much more.
You're now bringing 1,000 trucks, 2,000 trucks to come and still be on those same
In fact,
roads.
I was looking at the traffic level that we are going to start experiencing. And that's why I'm suggesting that why not multi-modal? You know, and that would have been cost effective even for Dangote. You know why? The level at which once you are able to lay rail, you know, and you have the cabin, you know, just for you just to move. The maintenance and what have you level is very low.
Let's look at the...
Maybe he's looking at CNG because he's also saying he's going to create 100 CNG stations. We are waiting because someone like us that is using CNG, we cannot even use it again because the queue is too much. You have to expend 5 hours. That means your man hour would have been wasted. Okay.
So now, we'll touch that briefly. The president decided to go CNG way to reduce the impact of fuel subsidy. Now, this is 2 years after, and somehow that impact has not been felt. Now, you went ahead to go and convert your vehicle to CNG, and somehow you had to fall back to the fuel, what you were trying to save cost from. You made an expense, and you're still making more expenses.
Sadly, I converted with 950,000. So now they convert with 200 and less. So now, can I tell you that I've not even, as an economist, you know, I've not been able, you know, to defray the cost, because I was thinking over 1 year, I would have, you know, defray and actually start benefiting, because you have to look at opportunity forgone, you know, as because for me to trade off such amount for such, I was thinking, okay, this will be much more economical, but now I cannot even assess it, because those that are assessing it, people are assessing it.
Wouldn't it have been more wise to have the CNG plants available?
Right. It's to be candid, they actually opened up new CNG, but it's not enough, and they didn't plan it very well. And people that are doing commercial are much more interested. But my pain is that even those commercial is not reflected on Nigerians. You know, when commercial people are actually using CNG, we expect it to reflect on the cost of transportation
and goods.
So that by the time you enter the road where they are taking 1,000, you should consider it for 500. But it does not make any meaning. So it's still to the benefit of those people that are taking advantage.
Hopefully something is done quickly to
I hope they listen to us and look at how to look at that and create solution to it.
Yes. Let's go back to the conversation that we're having on supply chain. Now, inland dry ports, warehousing, how can this help to, you know, curtail?
Okay. So now I can tell you, you know, Kaduna have dry seaports. I can tell you it has its advantage.
First of all, do us a favor and explain to us, in case you have when you say dry seaports.
Yes. So dry seaports simply means that, okay, let me use Kaduna as an example. You know, in our axis in North Central and Northwest. So Kaduna is now going to be a hub for us. So instead of me importing or shipping from Lagos to Abuja, I would prefer to ship from Lagos to Kaduna, and I'll go and take it from Kaduna to Abuja. Let's make sense of it. Kaduna has warehouse, both cold chain and for other one. So that warehouse is more cheaper, because warehouse is expensive in Abuja. So if I'm also bringing items to Kaduna, Kaduna is doing like bringing something big, and I have something small. So it's better I add it to Kaduna and go and take it in Kaduna than to take it with a high expense. Let me give you an example of container. One container can take a car, a refrigerator, you know, a lot of things in one container. So if I'm now importing or shipping from Lagos, I cannot only say I want to ship only my refrigerator. You know, it will cost me a whole lot. But somebody is shipping, we now do consolidated shipment, all of us coming together to ship in one container. So we are paying together to have reduced my cost. So what Kaduna is actually doing is that Kaduna have a warehouse where you can store. So Kaduna remain a hub where everybody will ship in, and they will now come and be taking it from there. So it's a good business for Kaduna, and it's also pay someone like me in Abuja, because cost of warehousing in Abuja is quite, and I'll now apply a strategy called just in time, JIT in supply chain. So that will help me that it is until I need that item, I will go and take it.
Okay.
Not that I will now come and store it in Abuja and be paying for like 2 months until I need it. This is the difference. So I will not pay for 2 months, I will pay where it's cheaper. When I need it, I will go and pick it and use it immediately.
Okay. All right. So that's how this impacts supply chain.
And it would have helped the economy too. And that's why you recall that there's what we call Rigasa, that's the rail terminal in Kaduna. It is targeted because it's closer to the warehouse. The same thing we have Iduyad, have a rail that pass through it, so that it will be much more economical. So in the long run, things will follow through rail down to Kaduna and have it stored there before you now come pick your own there. So
this brings me back to the rail conversation. We started this conversation with the President Muhammadu Buhari's administration.
Yes.
And frankly, I was expecting to see so much impact by now that, the country, at least the major parts of the country, are all connected via rail. However, some parts are still left in the loop.
I was surprised when President Tinubu opted to go and create a coastal road. Very good one. But what are the alternatives forgone? I would have expected that humongous money, spend it on rail, connect all the country together with rail. That would have bring economic value compared to creating a new road where even the internal road is having issue. And that's why our priority is key. Maybe you want to have a legacy project, and said, I want to create a coastal road that will have its name on it. But the fact is that what is actually solving the problem? What is our need? Our rail would have solved the problem. Myself, I was telling you, I was crossing this old southwest. Imagine if it's a rail and a rail experience, like the one someone is having, those beautiful rail that is timely, I'm crisscrossing. Imagine the economic impact that it will have until we have a leader who take in that direction. Not to have something called legacy, that they want to
have
do.
Something that's impactful.
Exactly, something that is impactful. And let's take us to a country like China. Why is China actually blossom? It's because of supply chain. They made their supply chain very, very easy. They try to make life easy for you. In fact, they make it until they even have what we call free trade zone in Nigeria. They don't want any holders for their citizens. That's why they have free trade zone, so that they can actually easily get their things done and pay less to actually achieve more. That's why business is easy. And apart from that, there's what we call ISO, International Standard Organization. Now, how many companies in Nigeria have it in Nigeria?
We see some of those stamps and some of the things that we buy. We see ISO.
Yes, you see, I'm not sure there are up to 600 companies that have it. And it's much more in pharmaceutical, even not in laboratory. And those things makes you not even do marketing. People will just come naturally to come and buy. That simply you are certified.
So certifications too
would help. Certification true will help. That's why if you want to be in business, that's what you should think about. Because if you don't certify, that means people don't have confidence in your product. And that's why most international companies that are doing well, like especially companies from China, America, they have ISO. So until we think in that direction and grow our companies to that level, through state policy, that's what will help us.
Okay. Now, what reforms are needed to, simplify? Because you just mentioned it now, port operations and customs processes, because that whole thing you talked about, you go from here to here to here to here, it sounds very cumbersome.
Yes, to really make supply chain much more easier, you have to reduce the bureaucratic bottlenecks. And that's why I think the essence of Office of Ease of Doing Business. So you look at it, okay, if I get something from Port Authority, how many hours, how many days will I use to actually assess my goods? Okay, no, we want you to use 5 hours to do perfect your paper and move, not using 1 week. Because using 1 week, you would have been paying for demurrage, you would have been incurring more costs, you'll be waiting for the product to sell, the user will be waiting for you. These are the problems. So until we make it one-stop shop and on the road, in advanced country, you are the one that will pack and will pay what you're supposed to pay and you will move. So it can be made in that way that when you are coming, you won't have all those. And insecurities are a problem too. Because if you go to a place like East and North, you discover that you have much more, roadblocks. It's another problem affecting our supply chain. So but I think government policy will solve the problem intentionally.
Now, you mentioned the Africa Free Trade, Continental Free Trade Act just a while back now. Our logistics problem as a country, how does it challenge, the ability for us to benefit from that?
Thank you. That's another thing we need to look at. You want to talk about African continental trade area. I've been to some African countries, and I've seen how they actually carry out very seamless. People know what to do. In fact, a place like Cotonou, let's even use Cotonou that we call dumping ground. A whistle will control citizen. Everybody will stand still.
Yeah.
And once you stand still, you know what they want to do.
They're very organized.
Yes,
very
go to Niger. Even Niger, they are very organized. But in Nigeria, we're not organized. So until we are organized, we will not take advantage. You know why? We have what you call infant industry. Okay, let's even use example of Abia. Or some Abia can produce shoe, right? They can produce a lot of products. Until the logistics for them to take this thing out to other country is made easy, they will never benefit. And how do we make it easy? Our export system must also be made much more easy. If the supply chain to export is not easy, you have to go to NIPC, you have to go to this to get paper, you have to go